out. The Next Round Live and their YouTube channel is all over the place. So it is absolutely phenomenal, the coverage they do of the SEC and Alabama and Auburn. So, Ryan, I think we're better now. How are you? And we still got a delay for some reason. I can't figure out what is going on. Maybe, and now we can't hear you. I guess we'll go with a mic check. Can we try one more time? Yeah, I think we were better off when you had your ear pods in. I don't know if you
He still has them in.
Yeah, you have them in. I think that maybe the audio is not turned on. There was a little bit of a delay earlier, but now it's we don't have audio. So how about now, Ryan? No, we can't hear you. We can't hear you for some reason. We'll keep working with that. SEC Network said last night that 118 ranked in turnover margin. Somebody posted on our message board. And one thing about we talked about the transfer rule that I think is something pretty significant is that yeah, that's, by the way, are you on Safari by chance, Ryan? We've had issues with Safari in the past. I should have mentioned that. That's a possibility. So we'll get Ryan back up there. How about now?
That better?
Yes, that is better, Ryan. We've got you. So
all right.
Yeah. So tell us, Ryan, about working with Henry To'o. I know you guys work with him in a very similar way to I work with Cooper Mays and Jacob Warren. Just your thoughts and impressions on him as a young man, because everything I hear, he's very impressive.
Oh yeah. He is a sharp guy, and he kind of even it's tricky transferring in from a place, and especially from a rival as Tennessee is for Alabama. But from everything I can gather, the moment he transferred in, he was just well accepted into that locker room, kind of took on a role of leadership in that locker room, and his teammates very much liked him. I have found him to be a genuinely likable guy, and I'm sure, look, I would understand the Tennessee fans. He's playing for the enemy. He played for them. He transferred out. That's a tricky situation. I don't anticipate that I could flip any Tennessee fans around on their opinion of him. But if you remove the color of jersey and the team he plays for, I have found him to be a tremendously likable guy. We do some fun interviews with him. He has a good time with us, and he's turned into a very good player. Alabama's got a good defense, and he is a very, very smart guy. And that's one reason to play middle linebacker in the Nick Saban system. You got to be really, really smart, because there's a lot on your plate. There's a lot asked of you just beyond your athletic ability. And I think that's a good descriptor of him. I've heard him described as a genius. I don't know if he would meet whatever the actual definition is of a genius, but he's got to be pretty smart to do what he does.
Agreed. And I think he was pretty smart, and some Tennessee fans might read this the wrong way. I think he was pretty smart to leave when he did. You didn't know that Josh Heupel was going to be what he is, and Tennessee's program had been in disarray for a decade. I don't blame him for leaving, and I think it was probably the right call. In retrospect, he would have been good under Heupel too, but who could blame him for leaving at the time?
Yeah, I mean, you can't see the future, obviously, and your choices are, okay, do I want to play, for a program that is mired in the mud a little bit, there's a coaching change and all those things, or I've got an opportunity to go play for the most elite program in America right now that is constantly playing for championships. I mean, which one are you going to pick? I think, it hurts, but I think the obvious pick, if you've got that opportunity, is to go to Alabama. Now, look, a lot of people will say, you made a commitment, you should be there for 4 years. Well, the other side of that is, Tennessee had made a commitment to a coach that Henry To'o had signed with. Now, look, I got no problem with Tennessee moving on for Jeremy Pruitt. I think it was the right time to do that, and they clearly have made the right choice with Josh Heupel. But, it kind of cuts both ways. I think a lot of times fans like to look at the commitment the player made to the school, but sometimes they don't step back and say, okay, did the school live up to its commitment to Henry To'o or any other player? And I think in a lot of ways you can make an argument that everything he committed to wasn't there. And I know what everybody says, commit to the school, not the coach. I get how you think that, but I just don't think that's real world thinking.
No, and covering recruiting is just not true.
No. No, I mean, you'd love to think that, right? You'd love to think everybody loves Tennessee so much, or everybody loves Alabama so much, they should be committing to that school and wanting to play there. Well, Dave, you talk to these guys, the relationship, not just to that head coach, the assistant coach that recruits them. That's who builds that relationship, right? And then the head coach comes in and closes the deal. So, I think that's what a lot of people lose sight of.
Ryan Brown of The Next Round Live, and you have to check that out. They have a great app as well. It's just really fantastic coverage of the SEC, in particular Alabama and Auburn. They do a really, really good job. I would highly encourage you to check it out. Like, subscribe, and share. And Amanda, jump in there. Go right ahead.
But we are looking at the obvious question that everybody wants to know. Who's starting? Is Bryce Young going to be in this game? If not, can Jalen Milroe handle this? Because I was at Alabama and Texas A&M. I went to the game. I was in the stands. I saw Jalen Milroe. I'm not impressed. I'm sorry. 3 turnovers by one single individual is too much for me. It's just too much for me. And with that being said, is there any insight you can give us on what's happening with Bryce Young?
Amanda, I think it was too much for Nick Saban too. I don't think he liked the 3 turnovers. I think Bryce Young plays. I would say I'm not 100% on it, but I would say probably 80 to 85% Bryce Young plays. Maybe even higher than that. Maybe even 90%. I think if these games had been reversed, if Alabama came home from Arkansas and then had to turn right around and go to Neyland Stadium, I think they might have considered playing Bryce Young. From what I understand, and obviously, the doctors don't talk about this. There are privacy laws, and I haven't talked to Bryce Young, but just from talking to people around the situation, from what I understand, it's just a pain tolerance thing, that this is a chronic injury that he has had with his shoulder, and it's on plays like you saw on the sideline against Arkansas where he's reaching out trying to gain more yardage and lands on the ball, and it's just it inflamed this issue with his shoulder, and it's kind of a chronic issue. And the doctors, can fire in the Toradol and numb that pain, and he can play through it, and it may cause him more issues, and it may just progressively get worse if he doesn't stop and rest it. But if needed, he can do that. And I believe that had this Tennessee game been last Saturday, that's exactly what would have happened. I think Nick Saban thought with Jalen Milroe, we can beat Texas A&M. And he was right, even as you pointed out, Amanda, with 3 turnovers, still they won that football game. Now, barely, but they still won the football game. But an uncharacteristically sloppy game by Alabama. And I agree with you. I don't. If it's Jalen Milroe in Knoxville, he's got to play way better. He showed some signs in Fayetteville. He's got to play way better in Knoxville if that's who it is. But I think you'll see Bryce Young. I'm fairly confident about that.
You mentioned sloppy. It's not the first time. Go back to Texas as well, that this Alabama team has played sloppy. Why? How disconcerting is that?
It is concerning. They just don't turn the ball over. Well, for one thing, Alabama in turnover margin is really, really bad. I think when I was trying to get my technical issues worked out here, I think you were actually talking about that, if I'm not mistaken. They're like 118 in the country in turnover margin. And they're just not forcing a ton, and you would think they are because of their defense, which is really good and has these amazing pass rushers. But they're just not forcing a ton of turnovers, and they've turned it over a little bit this season. And that is surprising because that is just uncharacteristic. Running backs under Nick Saban just do not fumble the football. They just don't. You go back and look at all the running backs that have played for Saban, and if you fumble the football, you're not getting on the field. I don't care how good you are. But you can go back and look at the Mark Ingrams and Trent Richardsons and Derrick Henrys and, Eddie Lacy's and people like that. They just did not put the football on the ground. And, that has happened some this year. And then Milroe, look, those are just blindside strip sacks. That's a guy that's holding on to the ball too long. And I do think, we talk about sloppy play. That's actually something you potentially can clean up. If a guy's got fumbleitis, he's got fumbleitis. Really, Milroe's were just from holding the ball too long. And I think maybe experience helps that a little bit. If he could play a little bit more, maybe he would be better at that.
What do you think Hendon Hooker is going to be able to do to Alabama's defense? I mean, how do you think that's going to play out? And with this wide receiving core, with, we have Cedric Tillman probably coming back for rumors. He's
Yeah.
coming back for this game. You have, Brew McCoy, you have Jalen Hyatt. You have a lot of offensive weapons on this Tennessee team. How's Alabama going to be able to defend that?
Excuse me. Yeah, I think that's the main question there. Now, I will say about Cedric Tillman, I think it's interesting because he had that tightrope procedure, which was it was, I guess, perfected, maybe not invented, but perfected by Dr. Norman Waldrop, who was a friend of mine here in Birmingham, and he's one of the Alabama team doctors. Now, I don't know that he did Tillman's, but I'm saying that procedure was kind of perfected by him. And a lot of players, he's joked with me before that a lot of Alabama players have told him they would like to have it done electively because it actually makes your ankle stronger than it was before, the way they do that procedure. However, Tua Tagovailoa had it done, and I think it was 20 days later he played again, and they were very worried about his cutting and just the way he would have to move around in the pocket. And I think if I read right, Cedric Tillman's 18 days out by the time this game kicks. So while I think he'll play as well, Amanda, I do wonder about his durability with that ankle because is he going to be 100%? I don't know. That said, Hendon Hooker brings to the table the thing that had traditionally given Nick Saban defenses fit, and that's a quarterback fits. That's a quarterback that both can throw and has some wheels and has mobility and is able to evade the pass rush. Now, one thing Nick Saban has kind of started doing, and I don't know what quarterback this would go back to that they faced, but he kind of changed his philosophy on this, and he's taught his guys don't rush past the quarterback, right? All right, so if you're Will Anderson or you're Dallas Turner and you're coming off the edge, if the tackle's forcing you outside and it's one of those where you're going to kind of loop around, some of these quarterbacks, he teaches them stop and then try to come back inside, basically. That's a very elementary description. I get that. But his whole thing is don't ever pass the quarterback, right? Kind of keep the quarterback adjacent to you or in front of you to prevent those big breakout run plays like you can get from a guy like Hendon Hooker. Alabama's secondary, as it pertains to Cedric Tillman or any other Brew McCoy, any other receiver, Alabama secondary, Dave, you mentioned the Texas game. They had a rough game against Texas. A lot of pass interference. They got real handsy. Two things. Number one, I do think they've improved on that. But number two, that was a Big 12 crew, and they call it a little bit different than the SEC. When Alabama has gotten in the SEC, they've been allowed. I know Tennessee fans are going to love what I'm about to say. The officials have allowed them to play a little more physical with the receivers. And that has helped Alabama's defense. But it is a developing secondary. There's no doubt. There were battles in both those corner spots. And it looks like they're going to go with Terrion Arnold, who made the big play at the end. He was the guy that was on the play at the end of the Texas A&M game, and Kool-Aid McKinstry as the two corners there. So that's kind of what it appears they've settled on.
What are your thoughts on how Will Anderson has played so far this year? I think he's a generational type talent going back to Derek Thomas. But your thoughts on how he's played to this point?
Well, he hasn't put up the numbers everybody thought he would. And it is. I'll tell you what Alabama has found in their packages is they've got what they call the cheetah package, right? And it is Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, and Chris Braswell. And you've got these three phenomenal pass rushers, Anderson being the best. And they have those guys in at the same time, and it creates blocking nightmares for the offensive line. So in obvious pass situations, they could have those guys in there, and that'll create a headache for Hendon Hooker. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But Will Anderson, to your point, Dave, as I think he's played exceptionally well. I mean, the guy, he pressures the quarterback a lot. They've schemed away from him. He's really good in the run game. While his statistical numbers might not be what everybody thought they were going to be, he has been really, really good this season, even though the numbers aren't quite there. I think a lot of people thought he was going to have, you mentioned Derek Thomas like sack numbers. He's probably not going to get to those numbers this year. But what impact has he had on the game that doesn't show up in the box score is the thing that you have to measure with him.
I'll tell you two things. I know Amanda's going to jump in here. One, the tight end has to help, and Tennessee's tight ends are pretty good. And the other is, unlike Jadeveon Clowney, you can't run the ball at him because he's as good against the run as he is against the pass. So I'm sorry for jumping in there, Amanda. But, yeah, he's not – he may never be a stat sheet guy, but he may be one of the most dominant players in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. And you're right about the tight end. You got to give a tackle help. There's been a couple, times I've seen teams. They think they can the motion of the play can go away from him and they can leave him unblocked, and he's able to chase down backs. He's too fast to do that. And then you've seen a couple teams that think they can allow their tackle to try to block him without help, and they can't. So, yeah, I mean, you got to provide help, whether it's a back chipping coming out of the backfield or you dedicate an extra man, dedicate the tight end to blocking him. And again, that's my point, Dave, is that doesn't show up in the statistics, right? Nowhere in the statistics does it say, well, they had to take a man out of the pass game to help block Will Anderson, so they were less effective in the pass game. But that's the kind of things he does for you.
Kool-Aid McKinstry. I love I love his name, Kool-Aid. I don't know why. I know it's a nickname, but we know we have Squirrel White on Tennessee's team. We had Ha Ha Clinton Dix at Alabama. I mean, there's a lot of nicknames. How do you think he impacts this game, and what do you think he brings to the table?
Well, he can impact the game in two ways. Well, he can impact the game in several ways. The Texas game that Dave mentioned earlier, he had a really difficult game. He got flagged for a lot of defensive pass interference calls, and that was obviously a negative impact on the game. I do think he has gotten better, but he is still a guy that likes to use his hands. He's still trying to get out of that high school mode where they're going to allow you maybe to use your hands a little bit off the line of scrimmage. So that's a negative impact. But the positive impact is he has gotten better, and he has become the guy Alabama's going to go with in that corner position. When Brian Branch went out of the Arkansas game injured, Brian Branch plays that all-important star position for Nick Saban. So it's a defensive back that does everything. He's got to be really good in pass coverage. He's got to be really physical against the run game. And the backup is Malachi Moore, but they allowed Kool-Aid McKinstry to play at some too, and so he got experience there as well. So I think that kind of shows you what Nick Saban feels about his ability. But the other way he'll impact the game is he's Alabama's punt returner, and he's really, really good in that situation. He's taken one to the house already. He's flipped the field several times. He is a dynamic punt returner for Alabama, and that may even at times be his biggest impact on the game, even though he's out there almost every defensive snap.
Interesting. Yeah. Jahmyr Gibbs transferred in. Obviously, I will give him the ultimate compliment. I think he needs to be a Dallas Cowboy because I'm a Cowboys fan. Do you think he needs to be a Miami Dolphin? Because you're a Dolphins fan.
Absolutely. I tell you who he reminds me of, and I'd not seen him play a ton at Georgia Tech, and even when he did, it wasn't in an offense like Alabama's, right? But when he came to Alabama, the person I most heard him compared to was Alvin Kamara, which obviously Tennessee fans will be very familiar with. And I tell you, watching him, I think that's a really good comparison. He is so fast. He's a really physical runner at times. But what he's done the last couple of games for Alabama, who's third in the nation in rushing offense, by the way, and first in the nation in yards per attempt. They're almost 7 yards per attempt right now. And a lot of that is because over the last two games, Alabama's run game has awakened. They've gotten their offensive line rotation the way they want it, and Gibbs he's blown up the last two games. When he is able kind of on that cutback to put his foot in the ground, he gets to full speed so quick. And I've seen team after team take such bad angles on him. They just misjudge his speed. He can get to the corner, and he can outrun defensive backs very easily. He is a huge weapon in both the pass game and the run game for Alabama. It could be a huge difference in this game. And I know Tennessee, they've been awful against the pass, but they've been pretty good against the run. So I think that's an interesting matchup is, Alabama's number 3 in the nation rush offense versus Tennessee's rush defense, which is obviously the strength of their defense.
Yeah, that's very true. It's very true. Do you see, I know we talked about Hendon Hooker a little bit. Do you see a way that Tennessee and Hendon Hooker, because we're going to use that because that's obviously their strength, can win this game versus Alabama defense?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think what I'm about to say is true. I think it is by far and away the best offense Alabama has faced. Now, when Alabama played Texas, those that didn't watch the game, Quinn Ewers, the Texas quarterback, started the game and had a lot of success against Alabama. Dallas Turner hit him. It was a personal foul. That was a terrible call. It was not a malicious, dirty play at all. Turner just hit him and he hurt his shoulder, and he's just now back for Texas. So, that's the asterisk is with Quinn Ewers. This might not be true, but Quinn Ewers didn't play that whole game. This is the best offense Alabama has faced. I would say, based on my opinion, it's the best defense Tennessee has faced. So, I think you've got that really interesting matchup, Amanda, that you've got do we think Alabama's defense is really good? Absolutely. But they haven't faced an offense like this. And again, I'll go back to what I say. It is traditionally the type of quarterback that can give Alabama fits. This is the type of guy that has given Alabama fits. So, I think I think this could be a shootout. I think this could be a game that, the winner is maybe in the low 40s. I could definitely see Alabama struggle, especially on the road, especially with that pace. That's another thing. I mentioned the type of quarterback, but pace has traditionally, that's why Hugh Freeze's offense gave Nick Saban and Kirby Smart nightmares back in the day, is they would run at that fast pace. It was one snap. I don't know what the stat is right now for Tennessee, but I think it's been one snap every 16 seconds or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that has been the type of pace that has given Alabama trouble over the years.
I know you got a show to do, but last thing, you say low 40s could win this game. That tells me that you think Tennessee has a realistic chance of winning, because Jimmy Holmes wrote on offthesports.com, Alabama 39-0 the past 5 years and holding opponents to less than 30. Mm-hmm. And Tennessee averaging 46.8. But Josh Heupel, even going back to the Central Florida days, does not win unless he scores over 30. So you think there's a realistic chance that Tennessee wins this game?
Oh, I think they've got a chance. The reason I said in the 40s, I think that's where Tennessee would have to get to win it, Dave. And the reason I say that is I just, look, Alabama is not dynamic at wide receiver. That is probably the Achilles heel. But if Bryce Young plays this game and he's anywhere close to 100%, there are extenuating circumstances and everything I'm about to mention. I get that before I say it. But I look at Anthony Richardson, who is a far less quarterback than Bryce Young. He threw for 450 yards. Now, look, I know they were behind and they were having to throw all the time, but Tennessee just couldn't stop it. I even look at Jaden Daniels Saturday, and again, I get it. They're behind, they're having to throw, but he threw for 300 yards. Jaden Daniels, he's average at best. So, if those guys can do that to Tennessee's secondary, what can the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback do to Tennessee's secondary? That's why I think for Tennessee to win it, they would. I think a Bryce Young that is healthy and playing well, I don't think Tennessee can keep Alabama out of the 40s. That's the way I would put it.
Yep. Great stuff. Ryan, how do we follow your work? You're streaming and you're all over the worldwide interweb.
Yeah, we're just about everywhere you can get us except for radio, right? So just go to nextroundlive.com. That is nextroundlive.com, or at nextroundlive on social media and YouTube. You'll find us all over those places. And I appreciate the kind words you say. And I'm sorry about my lack of professionalism early on with the crappy audio and video and all that. I'm glad I got worked out.
You're golden, brother. Trust me. We've had everything from a tree fall in the power line and knock out Wi-Fi during the show. That was a small blip in the radar. But I think you would agree, going audio to video is a pretty significant jump.
It brings in a lot more things that can go wrong. There's no doubt about it.
Have a blessed day, Ryan. I appreciate it, buddy.
All right, guys. Good talking with you. Y'all take care.
Ryan Brown, Next Round